Hello everyone, welcome to My Wellness Session number 3. Today we're going to talk about breathing. I have spoken about breathing in the past, even done a video on diaphragmatic breathing in the hopes that you would try it at home, but breathing is such an important piece of the health and wellness package, you might say, that I didn't think one video was appropriate. We need to discuss it a little further, and there's a couple of issues that I think we can clear up and maybe make it more desirable, you might say. It really should not be an optional piece of your health and wellness program. It should be done daily. It should be done 2 to 3 times a day in short bouts, but 2 to 3 times a day to be effective. And I think one of the initial problems with breathing is, how can something so simple have such an impact on my health? And I can see where that comes from, but hopefully we'll explain that as we go through the rest of this video. Another problem that arises sometimes, I think, is that people feel it's a little metaphysical or a little bit too attached to Eastern philosophies, or in general just a little too touchy-feely for people, so they tend to not do it. They just skip over it. And that's a big mistake, because it is probably one of the most powerful tools we have to affect our overall health and wellness. So to get started, let's talk a little bit about anatomy and physiology, and with that we have to speak about the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is a separate nervous system from the central nervous system. Most people are very familiar with the central nervous system, the brain, the spine, the peripheral nerves that control sensation and movement, that kind of thing. The autonomic nervous system has basically been around for eons. It has helped us survive to the level of society that we have today, and it controls most of the automatic things that go on in the body, which you'll find are enormous and affect literally the entire body. So we want to talk about that. The autonomic nervous system, basically, I mean, it controls so many things. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, and sugar levels are monitored in the blood. The atrial pressure, blood pressure, is monitored. It can even monitor for toxins in the blood and the cerebral spinal fluid, that type of thing. It controls digestion completely. So it literally affects every part of the body. It's divided into 3 parts, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, and the enteric system. We're going to focus mostly on the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system, but let me just mention that the enteric system is the one that controls basically digestion, monitors the food in the stomach and the intestines, and releases the chemicals that help you digest and process food and move it through the system. And that system is so intricate, you might say, that many people call it the second brain. It is nothing that we should leave out, but we don't tend to talk about the enteric system as much as the sympathetic and the parasympathetic when it comes to the effect on the rest of the body and health and wellness. The sympathetic, parasympathetic system has constant monitoring and control over things like heart rate, respiratory rate, salivation, perspiration, pupil dilation, urination, sexual arousal, that type of thing, swallowing, blood pressure, pain tolerance and pain expression, even insulin secretions, and stress chemicals. Chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol, that's one of the keys, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. For instance, when cortisol is released into the body, it actually, in excess, I should say, cortisol is not a bad thing in short spurts in emergency situations, but when it is released ongoing, and frequently it is under stressful ongoing stress, it tends to dampen the immune system, lowers the immune system's ability, and it also changes the way we metabolize the food and process and store food, so you tend to metabolize more fat. So those 2 things alone can create a lot of stress on the system in general. Stress chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol have been related to asthma, back pain, heart arrhythmias, fatigue, chronic fatigue, headaches, blood pressure troubles, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers, even heart attacks, stroke, anxiety, respiratory infections, and just difficulty in general. It's also even been related to infertility issues, these chemicals, or adrenaline and cortisol, actually just kind of age us in general. It speeds up the aging process in general, and it has even been related to slow wound healing. It affects the immune system so much it can slow down how we heal from wounds. The autonomic nervous system has nerves and neurons that literally go to every system in the body and help control how that system acts and reacts, you might say. So it has to be balanced on a daily basis. You want it functioning at its peak every day. That's why it's important to do some breathing exercise on a daily basis. Exercise in general is a great way to affect the autonomic nervous system and have an effect on all these things that the autonomic nervous system has control over, but few people get enough exercise to create that response or that control over the autonomic nervous system to keep it in good balance. So the breathing is a great way to just kind of keep it in check, and it's so simple. You can literally, you can do it anywhere. It's fast. You don't have to do a lot of it. A little bit goes a long way. You can do it literally any time. It takes very little time. So it's something that you really need to try to work into the program. Short bouts work well. The research shows even as few as 5 to 10 breaths can make a change. Now, I'm not saying that's all you should do or need to do, but as little as 5 to 10 breaths 3 times a day can have a large impact on the autonomic nervous system. So we need to focus on this. There's other ways to use the autonomic nervous system to your advantage, and we're going to talk about those as we go on through some of these wellness sessions. But for right now, just understand how much breathing can reset and balance out the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, and technically even the enteric system to control all of these things. I mean, think about it. If you had something that could have some control over blood pressure and digestion and heart problems and breathing problems and fertility problems and have any effect on all those systems, wouldn't you try it? So start to focus on your breathing and try it each day. Don't get frustrated with it. Don't try to overdo. Start slow, build up. And I have talked about in the past the diaphragmatic breathing, so today I'm going to briefly mention one we call alternate nostril breathing. It's very simple to do, 5 to 10 breaths.